All right. Well, it's goddamn, it's been a week. So we'll start with the most
Hey now. That was a very loaded statement. You don't want to take that one on stage.
loaded
Oh my
indeed. Yeah.
god, you're a dick.
Uh, well, it is what it is. So Alec Baldwin, he's been shooting this film, and well, well,
Oh,
he
it's tragic, but like at the same time, who the like? All right, you're supposed to have low power blanks on
yeah,
set.
yeah. Actually,
That's
yeah.
what you
Let's
fire.
let's actually just break this down real quick for
They
how
had
it's supposed to
live
work.
rounds.
So you're supposed to have modified firearms that can only fire blanks. Point one. Point two, they're supposed to only be handled by the armorer on set or whatever the fuck they call it. Point three, they're supposed to always be checked every time they're moved between people. And point four, you're supposed to always observe the rules of gun safety anyway, even though it's a blank firing pistol.
There's a couple points of irony I need to point out. After just so a blank, they're low power blanks, so they basically have just enough powder to pop the little cardboard cap out the front
And by
and
the
make
way,
and make some light.
those safety rules are actually caused by the fact that they used to use high power blanks, and somebody used a gun that was old at one time and had something stuck in the actual thing. So when they used a
Uh,
high power blank, it
yeah,
actually fired around and killed somebody.
yeah.
And that
So
somebody's name was Brandon Lee, and the movie was The
Yes,
Crow.
it was.
yeah. So a couple points of irony there. Had he followed had he actually gone and taken an NRA training course, the things that things he's against,
Yeah,
um, he would have never pointed the gun at somebody without checking it first.
Unless that somebody was Trump. I'm sure he would have
Right.
pointed that voluntarily.
Oh, it just like it's something else that people point like the conspiracy theory is going around right now is that some MAGA hat decided to put live
Oh my
rounds in the
god, that was
magazine.
so funny.
I just
that's
So
like I was thinking, like, and again, like the guns are supposed to be modified so that they cannot load a gun. I'm sorry, cannot load a bullet with a round, like a slug in the end of it.
and even if they
Um,
can, they've got like a cross in the fucking barrel, or at the very least a bar
right.
that this
And so
thing's
that you
going to
see
hit and
confetti come out.
halfway explode in your hand, very likely, if you try and do it.
Like, and that's not like they put a little plastic insert. It's supposed to be like welded in, like they drilled holes, they put wires through, and then they welded the wires in,
Yeah, and
and then they
not
put
like
cut
a
off the
little
exit.
wire, but like the something as thick as like a 10 penny fucking nail is in the middle of a barrel. It's supposed to be, at least.
Right. Kind of like orange tips are supposed to prevent cops from shooting kids, but
Right.
that's a different story, isn't it?
Oh, indeed it is. Which one are we talking about? There you go.
Well, I suppose
So,
that's the other part of the irony there is that he had previously said I wonder what it feels like to accidentally kill someone, and
yeah,
then someone said something to the effect of, well, why don't hope you don't find out, and he said, watch this.
yeah. No, he
Um,
really did.
hold on, I have these three images right here for just the this basically lays out the shortest version of this possible in these three images.
Yeah,
There's the thing happening after he says, "I wonder what it feels like to wrongfully kill someone." Then there's the part where he says, "Watch this," after someone says, "Shut up, stupid."
yeah,
And then there's Wamelo herself saying, "You can't make fun of him," after having made fun of Liz Cheney's dad getting shot, or sorry, shooting someone.
yeah, yeah. I am kind of surprised they didn't have the one guy, the director, come on television today and just apologize to Alec for being in front of his gun, like like they did for old Dick. Have an old dude come on television, still got the buckshot in his face. You can see the spots of lead around his eyes and mouth. And he's like, "Man, I am
Ah,
real sorry that I got out
Oh
there
God,
in front of old Dick Cheney's gun. I shouldn't have done that. I was a real
I,
dumb guy."
I'm getting sent this
and you
shit
know
like as we're
what?
talking to.
Like, the funny
Here's
part
another one.
is that that was like I remember being on the left at the time that kind of shit aired, and you were like, it was so maddening to see something that stupid for political stunts. And now I'm on the opposite side of the aisle, and it's equally stupid when, if somebody was to do that on the left. But
Well,
you know what?
it's just
Here's
interesting
what's
how
gonna
stupid
happen.
is apolitical, isn't
Out
it?
of curiosity, just to be very clear, has Alec Baldwin come out as gay yet, or is that like
Oh
part
no,
of the
he
next
hasn't
round
even
of color?
he hasn't even gone to therapy for the terrible thing that he's had to endure yet. After he's gotten through his therapy sessions, then he can come out as
He just shot
gay or
somebody.
for yeah.
Well, he won't
Well,
come out as
well, yeah.
gay.
Think
He'll be
about the
coming out as a
tragedy of
lesbian.
that. He's had to live
No.
through that, man.
You guys are missing it. You got it wrong. He's coming out as a lesbian after he transitions.
There you go. There you
Before,
go.
but before his surgery, all right. He's got to get used out of that dildo before he cuts it off. I'm talking about the one in his pants, not the one on his neck.
Gotcha. So here's the basic situation for anyone who's missed it. I've done my best to try and get a full breakdown of the actual minutes of how this went down. So it seems like there has been some real trouble on set. Alec's been the general asshole-ish, dickish kind of guy that's pushy that he normally is. And so there have been a lot of issues with staff on set. From what I understand, this is kind of allegation. This is
Maybe walked off because of safety issues regarding the gun.
actually no. It's funny you mentioned that. There actually was a walk-off on set earlier that day of
That's
some of the
true, right?
yeah there was. I don't know if it was related to gun safety or what, but apparently
I know it was a safety issue, and I thought it was the gun, but maybe it was like a ladder or something.
It was working conditions and the general disregard for safety.
okay, yeah. I think it was like a general thing, not anything specific.
Some people who claimed that they had issues with the way the guns were being handled.
Really interesting. So now this will fall onto the prop master, obviously, but every single aspect of the production falls on the producer. The producer of Rust is one Alec Baldwin. So he had the final say in all of this. So we've got a little bit of background. We've already got trouble on the set, for one, because of people not being safe. We'll be kind and say in general. And then we have a walkout that very day. Well, that very day being yesterday. So we have this walkout for safety issues. And the director says, hey, we're going to need to reshoot this one scene. I'm paraphrasing. I don't know the exact wording. And Alec Baldwin, probably near the end of his rope, having had to deal with a long day of upstarts that think they know what's right and know how to deal with things in Hollywood. Oh, did I mention that this isn't in Hollywood? It's in New Mexico. And being in New Mexico, he's not tied by California law, and so therefore didn't actually get any SAG-AFTRA, like, union people to do the work. He just got local scabs, interestingly enough. So, that being the case, yeah, funny. Because if he'd actually got, like, licensed prop masters.
The local economy injection of capital, that's criminal.
Well, not only that, I mean, he's getting a lot of business for their ambulance services, and the hospitals are going to be doing really well now. I mean, not to mention any local psychological services that they're going to need to, pull on board. But anyway.
I'm sure he'll be okay once he gets back to his California shrink.
Oh, well, yeah. You can't trust one of those non-Cali ones.
He's the victim here.
Well, yeah. I mean, just think about what he's had to live through already. He had to watch someone get shot today. He had to watch someone get killed. Poor guy. Okay, so anyway,
I'm still going when he's going to come out as gay in a week.
Oh yeah, no, it's coming. But anyway, so we've got the scene all set. They say we've got to reshoot the scene, and so Alex says, "Well, how about I shoot you instead?" Now, what immediately happens there? Oh, it does, and I imagine it was. It's a long day. You've been dealing with a bunch of dumb bullshit, and so you pull out your blank firing gun. Oh no, not blank firing. You pull out your actual revolver that it has got blanks in it. Well, no. Okay, well, it doesn't have the frying pan. Well, no. But it does actually have live rounds. At least one, possibly two. So we know he pulled the trigger once, maybe twice. We don't know. But he shot the director right there on the spot and the director of cinematography, and she's dead.
Hutchins.
Yes. Helena Hutchins, who has actually got, kind of a it's kind of a nice story that she's got. Like, she's a person that kind of came up from nothing and everything. It's the story you want to hear. With the ending, you don't. And that's pretty much the situation. Yeah, Alec has come out and offered his condolences. I'm sure that he'll be going and seeking help. Professional help to help him deal with the grief of having to watch someone get shot in front of him. So, we're going to be titling this episode, Alec, Get Your Gun. Because
Oh my god.
I've been saving that one. That one was so perfect. It is. It really is, isn't it?
Oh, but you see, I can't believe you haven't gone with this one. Prop gun.
Oh, very good. Very good. That's quality. That one's going up on the Twitter feed. Oh, good times. So we've got the... well, actually, you know what? We've got some more good time stuff. We'll go ahead and just drop it.
We got another one.
The poor Canuckistanis up in Canuckistan, the people in government have been told that they can offer no support to anyone by the name of Brandon. It's come down from the top. So if you got a friend named Brandon
yes.
up there in Canuckistan, well, you're just going to have to say, I'm sorry, Brandon. You're on your own. Because you can specifically not use the wording, let's go, Brandon, or any variation thereof under any circumstances. It is specifically banned by the Canadian Public Service.
I actually got some...
The best part about this whole entire thing is that the actual polls are showing that the top approval for Brandon, as it may be, is only about 26% amongst independents. That's just great news.
And that's without even talking about the disapproval numbers, which are on the rise. I want to say 40-something% amongst independents.
At the end of the day, the approval is what will hopefully affect the numbers. I mean, given it was a pretty close election, come 2024, after everything's already screwed up, we will have a reckoning. Unless, maybe, just maybe, everybody will get on board with the idea of electing the whole congressional caucus and having them have Trump be speaker, and then ramming two impeachments through the Senate. That would be really great.
It would be hilarious at the very least.
It would be, yes. I can only hope.
Well, yeah, we could use a little bit of comedy. Speaking of comedy, our friend Feely Joe, the skin suit, he had something to say about a friend of his. You guys have probably heard of Chris Dodd. He's a guy that's done some stuff in media. So anyway, Chris Dodd, he's got a little bit of history. He was a friend of Ted Kennedy, and they were known for being fans of sandwiches. They like a sandwich made of a waitress and them. So Joe Biden, he recently had something to say about Chris Dodd. He said he's somebody that would not disrespect a waitress. Isn't that a funny joke? Oh, it's a funny joke. I'll make sure and leave a link to that for everybody who wants to have a quick look-at-see.
Did you guys see Did you guys see that town hall that he did? That was
I saw Jetpack
Oh,
Joe.
the Cornholio? Oh yeah, Jetpack Joe, Cornholio, what have you? Yeah. I was thinking it had the look of a man who is doing his best to have a turtle not arrive.
Well, it's just really funny because he's turning around and he's saying,
him needing a reboot. Check this out.
Oh yeah, with the sound. Oh yeah. That was really quite something.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing. That I haven't seen it. I've just seen like a couple bits and pieces, but there's like 5 of them from just that one alone, just the town hall on CNN, and it's It's absolutely disastrous. Like, how can you have something like this and try and pass it off as even remotely functional?
What now? I keep hearing the ballot stuff. I keep hearing murmuring about Arizona. You guys heard anything about that? I haven't seen anything come out from
I saw that
opposition
there
media.
was a report that was issued to hopefully make the Maricopa County Twitter people shut the fuck up. That had basically just a whole bunch of info that was directly contradicted everything that was being posted on their Twitter feed.
Really?
But this, I mean, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic here, but at the same time, like you guys presented a report, fine. You said you basically had to punt a lot of the issues because you were flat out blueballed by Maricopa County.
Oh yeah, and that's some
and
bullshit
just
there too.
Like what you really needed to do was get the key things that were happening and get them to bullet points and like hammer on them, which you didn't do.
Now that being said,
they should have gone down the road.
I believe now that they are going into a full forensic, like they're going into a deeper audit now because they have to because they've
a deeper audit.
Yeah, right. Yeah, 2 more weeks. I know.
Just in time for the 2022 election season. Holy
well,
shit,
no, don't get ahead of yourself now. Don't get ahead of yourself. I don't know if they'll have it done by then.
Shit was predicted a fucking year ago, wasn't it?
It will be interesting to see how well Joe keeps up, though. I mean, that skin suit's starting to tear, and the maggots are filling out.
So, just again, as much as I am skeptical of the legitimacy of the win, right? I have not seen any actual evidence that there was anything more than,
Well, I mean, we were pretty, clear and consistent, I think, on the extent of the fuckery that was involved, and that
right.
it likely would not have. It's possible it could have changed the outcome, sure, but like that is an exceptional claim that requires exceptional evidence, and all we've seen to date is that there was enough to fuck up like some local stuff.
Now that said, there's a lot of instances of things where it could fuck up some local stuff. And all of these instances occur in the places where they would need to occur for this to happen.
Hey, Rachel Rodriguez, or Rochelle, whatever the fuck her name is, Rodriguez, that bitch in Texas. Texas is not, a liberal stronghold. And she wasn't exactly operating in Austin, Texas, or Dallas.
That's fair.
So, statewide judges that she said she had in her pocket, state senators she said she had in her pocket, like these are big players, but she Republican and Democrat. This is the kind of thing that could fuck up an election one way or another, and that's the problem. Is that both sides play the game. The Democrats are more flagrant about it. The Republicans don't call it out because then they lose out on it.
Well, one of the main issues here, though, with it is that it's indicative of an arching problem.
That's an entirely plausible theory. Is that the reality is the reason why we didn't do a thorough investigation is that the Democrats and Republicans, neither one knows who committed more fraud. Like
guaranteed on that.
Well, I mean, you can look at what happened with Brian Kemp's daughter's boyfriend.
It's the same thing with taxes,
and they don't know who did it.
It's the same thing with taxes. Here's the thing: like part of the reason that tax code is so complicated is that you don't know who's paying their fair share or not, because you don't know like what the fuck the fair share is supposed to be.
Oh, hey, speaking of that, I've got some good news, guys. It was going to be $600 in your account or in transactions through an account over a fiscal year. That would result in the IRS being able to see literally everything that was done with the account. Well, good news. They're going to change that to $10,000 of any amount of movement within any given account within any given fiscal year.
It used to be that if you had a transaction of 10 grand or more,
individual transaction,
that transaction was flagged.
Yes, but individual, singular
flagged,
transaction.
The bank had to report the transaction itself to the IRS, not your account, but your transaction.
Yep.
And
so I bet you they were trying to go down this road to extend the rule. to the other side of this, which is that if there's the law is and facetious arguments in the past, the law is that if it's a federal law, if you transit a state line with $10,000 or more in your possession, you are required by law to notify basically the government. The government's of both states and the federal government. You're supposed to notify them that you're doing that. Cash, mind you. So credit cards don't count, but if you got cash in the trunk, then that's supposed to happen. If you're in a border region, which is any part of the United States that is within 100 miles of a border, is the border region. That's where your Fourth Amendment goes away, by the way. So that's basically all of Florida, half of Texas, most of California, etc.
Fascinating.
If you're in a border zone, then the federal government and Border and Customs get to have their fingers in the pie, so to speak. If you don't notify them that you're transiting that money across state lines, the reason here is to preempt federal crimes when they occur by looking out for things like mob activity and gang activity, or cartel activity, if you will, the DEA being involved. If large amounts of cash are transiting state lines, they want to know about it so that they can get the federal infrastructure in play. Get the FBI, etc. Which of course means that everybody definitely does that. Nobody fucking transits $10,000 in cash across state lines unless you're a bank. Everybody's money's in the bank, so people who don't have money in the bank are the people who are directly impacted by this. And so you'd have to get caught, obviously, because who the fuck's going to tell, just call up the cops. By the way, I'm crossing this state line at this time with $10,005 in cash. But that's one of those things that they can confiscate the money that they find if they do that. That is basically one of the ways they can just add cash to the pile.
Fun fact.
I mean,
let me share a little interesting bit of
know.
trivia related to this specifically. And pimps. You see, there's a reason why pimps have been extravagant for quite some long while, is that gold and jewels retain their value at a very basic level. So if they get put away, say, take off this ring, that ring, they know exactly how much it is, they know what their bail is. Here, baby, you take this to the pawn shop, you get it in there, and you get me back out. Or you, again, know exactly what that value is. You are carrying on you a small bank, as it were. You could be carrying $100,000,
well,
but all you've got in your wallet is $100.
The real funny part here, aside from the intrusion, is they're attempting to argue that it's to make sure everybody pays their fair share.
Oh yeah,
the reality is
I
the
love
only
that
reason
part.
it would be set. The only reason it would be set at that low is that they are specifically going to go after the people like waitresses and whatnot who make money on tips, which is cash. Now, why is it that they've decided to go out with this rule? Well, it turns out that in September, on Labor Day, when they ended the whole unemployment benefit, nobody went back to work. Nobody was getting work in August. Nobody was getting work in July. Nobody actually was planning for this. And all of a sudden, there's nobody homeless on the streets. And despite the fact that, they actually have to pay their rent, and despite the fact, so the question is how is it that these people are making money? And
well, I mean, it is technically possible that they held on to some of that $600 a week they were getting, but,
I am sure that there's a large number of people who went to work under the table, delivering pizzas or Chinese food or whatever, right? They get paid for the delivery service in cash. They take the cash, they put it in the bank, and that's what they're going for. They're going after the people who are probably making a fairly decent wage. They probably know how much people on average make doing this. And then they're just targeting everybody who's on the lower portion of the economic spectrum using cash.
Well, that's the fun part, isn't it?
That's their target.
The lower part, the lower end of the spectrum part is the part that really sticks out here. Is
it really does.
It's a way to go after the millionaires.
I have no problem.
It's hilarious.
I have no problem with that. I really don't. I really don't have an issue with that because of how much taxes I pay. right? If I didn't pay as much in taxes, I would be like, hey, everybody, I'm all for everybody getting away with everything they can get away from.
I don't know. No,
Get away with.
I just think it's hilarious though that they're doing this and they're framing it as a way
But
to
yeah,
basically get
Oh
mad at
yeah,
people
this
like
is
you
this is
who
how
make
we're going to
money.
get the millionaires and billionaires and the trillionaires.
yeah,
And
exactly.
they have no idea how badly. Like the funny part is like they've got to have some inkling in the back of their mind, like a little dark cloud, but they have no idea exactly how big the hole in their foot is going to be in the next 3 years from firing a bullet that size through it. You know, we're gonna get back at all. It's like saying you need to raise your taxes to fix the environment. We're gonna raise your taxes to get the millionaires who are already paying their taxes.
Well, you know,
Good job,
the
guys.
the fun part of this whole entire thing is going to be that A, none of these people are going to see it coming, and B, these are all the people who probably put them in power. Like,
Well, as
that's
is
gonna
often the
be
case with
right.
useful idiots, they're the first against the wall.
That's going to be the best part about this whole entire thing. But I mean, Jesus, 3.5
And on that
trillion,
note,
man.
you know, for something a couple weeks back that I don't think we actually touched on, but is worth mentioning, our good friend Greta made an interesting discovery when she was making a speech to a bunch of adults that they don't give one single tiny even hint of a fuck about what she has to say as long as she says the magic words. It was truly beautiful. Did you guys catch that?
What was this?
No.
Oh, let me get the speech. She just said blah, 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 climate change. And every time she said one of the magic words like climate change or carbon capture or any of the shit, all the fucking people clapped. Oh, great. Greta blah, blah, blah. Here we go on YouTube.
Oh boy.
So this will be from NBC.
There is no planet B. There is no planet blah. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. This is not about some expensive, politically correct green act of bunny hugging or blah, blah, blah. Build back better, blah, blah, blah. Green economy, blah, blah, blah. Net zero by 2050, blah, blah, blah. Net zero, blah, blah, blah. Climate neutral, blah, blah, blah. Our hopes and dreams drown in their empty words and promises. Of course, we need constructive dialogue, but they've now had 30 years of blah, 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 and where has that led us?
So, when you look at that, you have to take something away from it because you're not supposed to clap, you fucking idiot seals. You're supposed to sit in silence and be stunned at this.
I love the way that the Guardian is characterizing this, and it falls in line with your description here. It's like Greta Thunberg has excoriated global leaders over their promises to address the climate emergency, dismissing them as blah blah blah. Like, yeah, okay, and then they clapped, which I think is fucking hysterical.
Truly.
Well, I bet, I bet you they think that they're being that they're enjoying the irony of the moment there, and that somehow makes them a peak intellectual to recognize their faults they're never going to fix.
I think the best overview of that mentality actually was brought up by Michael Schellenberger on the Tim Pool's After Hours long form podcast this week, where Michael Schellenberger came in and he said, well, you know, when people say climate change, what they're not really sitting there and talking about minor temperature increases over a minor period of time. They're talking about wanting humanity to pay for its sins against the environment in the totality, right? As if it's a god and we should be sacrificing virgins. And I think that's a poignant point. There's a lot of folks out there in that crowd who have never read a scientific paper. They've never gone through the IPCC reports. They don't know any of this stuff. And even the folks who are actively writing in this field, you see these gross aberrations. I've brought up a few here, but I mean, even talking about I don't think we really did a deep dive into the most recent IPCC working group release. There's one table in there that says everything that you need to know about the field of climatology. And that table has a chart, and that chart is the estimates of ECS by various data sources, right? And one of them is measurements. And then one of them is what climate scientists know. And the measurements and what climate scientists know don't even overlap. They are just what we are physically detecting with instrumentation does not match with what we believe is going on in terms of the overall effect of CO2 on the environment. And that is confirmation bias given form.
So just let me parse that real quick. So just to put that out there, what that means is the numbers that exist today that are in the data, the hard and fast numbers, don't match with what people are fucking saying.
Not even remotely.
Not even remotely.
And this isn't even like a 2 + 2 5 thing. This is like 2 + 2 = orange.
Right. That's actually pretty good.
It's more like so when you actually take a look at the instrumentation data, the original range by the Charney report in the 1970s or something like that, some 40 years ago. The original Charney report came out and said that the range is between 1.5 and 3.5, and that was 1.5 and 4 or something like that with what was it? Something like that. Yeah, 4.5, 1.5 to 4.5 with a midpoint of 3, right? And that was the range that was given, and that has remained largely unchanged. Now they shrunk it down a little bit in terms of what their overall best estimate is, but what has happened is we've taken some measurements. We've got 40 years of data, so we've taken some measurements to see what has happened, how much did we emit, what's the temperature done, and the instrumentation data has shown very conclusively that it's closer to the 1.5. It's but 1.5 to 1.67 is kind of what it is. Degrees Celsius per doubling of CO2. Now, where does that 1.5 to 1.67 come in? Well, that's actually the direct computation from radiative physics. If you go out and you were to go perform a basic calculation of radiative physics, it would give you typically somewhere around the order of 1.6 to 1.868, right? It's pretty narrow range as to what you would expect for a doubling of CO2. I've done the calculation. It's not very high. So if our measurement's saying that and our physics says that, where does the rest of this 4.5 degrees Celsius number come into?
I should jump in here real quick to nitpick. And this is gonna be affect your statement there very much, but just to point out something here, CO2 is fairly dilute in the Earth's atmosphere. It's a very low concentration. We're talking about ppm. We're in the tenths of a part per thousand. We're in a tenths of a part per thousand. We're in parts per 10,000. Single digits territory there. That's very dilute. So when we're talking about a doubling of CO2, we're in what's called a linear range, so that you can double CO2, say, a few times, and you're still going to be within the linear range there. There's effectively a constant value you can assign.
Yes.
Whereas, otherwise, if you had significantly more CO2, there be other effects that come into play that are more significant.
Or to say
very insignificant at that
to put it in a really plain set of language.
Lambert equation.
Well, let me pause you for just a quick second so that I can actually kind of parse that. To put it in super plain language, we're dealing with much less than whole percentages of percentages. So a doubling of 0.001 is 0.002. That's not even remotely near a whole percent. Just to parse that. Anyway, sorry to bust in there, but I just want to make sure that's understandable.
You missed a zero, but yeah.
Okay, exactly. There you go. Well, sorry, please go ahead. I did want to put that out there.
Steve.
Oh no, sorry. My wife needs me to go fetch a computer.
Oh dear.
So I'm doing that real quick. But the
point being that it's dilute, so you can double things and come up with a degree change that would be a result of that.
Work one, or for you to help me remember what the benefits fucking login is.
I don't know either of those things, Robin.
Yes, so that's why I asked you.
I have to go fetch computers. Hold on.
Of course.
I've got to find the right laptop. You can't just have
no
a
problem.
laptop. You need the right laptop.
No, absolutely.
So-
There's something that we need to share with the audience in the meanwhile. That's recently breaking news regarding, well, really one of our first people of color on the Supreme Court.
Oh, we got to this one, did we?
So it appears that Clarence Thomas will be taking his place of supremacy in the near future as the head of the Supreme Court.
Yes.
I mean, you couldn't ask for a better thing. I mean, we're going to finally have a person of color leading the Supreme Court.
The first one.
The very first. I mean, how progressive can you get?
Now all he has to do is transition to a woman, and we've got the full package.
Well, lack of package,
You know,
but yeah.
Well, you never know. He could be storing it in the back of the wheelchair.
Uh,
So he would also become the first trans disabled.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if you're
Talking about
trans
sex,
disabled, you don't necessarily have. Well, I mean, we don't want to be, turfs or anything here. So, I mean, maybe he just doesn't want to express that. So, he might be trans.
Are you talking about the trans exclusionary radical fitness people, or are you talking about the trans exclusionary, like?
Of any variety, really. I mean, there's so many different flavors of fruitcake out there, right? But anyway, if you're gonna go for the one, go for it. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Twice. Collect it twice, because you need the extra chromosomes.
Well, I mean, it's got a 2 in there, right? So, it's two chromosomes, whatever.
That's for two-spirit, which is when you apply to Harvard as a Native American, and then you come out as extraordinarily white later.
I see. I would say how, but
so almost.
What can I say? That might be a. I wouldn't want people to think I was saying the wrong thing and misrepresenting my my dear fallen ancestors.
Too many layers to that one. That was one of them, yes.
I would not want to disrespect my dear fallen ancestors.
Beer was another one, dude. Honey, can you get me the beer, which is totally not propped in the kitchen for an easy grab?
All right, but let me get a.
Back.
Yeah.
Oh.
I would like to steer back to the climate change thing, so I can.
Oh yeah, no, I got that out there, so absolutely.
Yeah.
So I wanted to. It does actually vary. It's not linear; it's still an exponential curve. But if you actually do the calculations with Beer-Lambert, you do get out that for every doubling at this frame. Now, by the way, this is also accounting for the fact that you have to include the actual water vapor, which is much higher and operates on the same spectra as CO2. So it's all very good. But when we start talking about, it's almost identical.
They're
over
both
the
infrared.
entire wavelength.
Oh come on! There's a big shift between the two of them.
Oh, it's not that. The actual absorbance of water is over the entire range in which CO2 is active. Water is consistent at the same absorbance as its peak, right? Water is literally better at doing what CO2 does. I think it's like the 12 nanometer peak is the only spike in the entire spectra, which is greater than that of water. Like water dips at that one point and it fills the hole. And it's only one spectral line. Like it's not even a full spectra. It's crazy. But in any case, when we start talking about it, it does work out to a doubling of CO2. That's so should lead to a consistent temperature shift. And when we actually go take a measurement of that, it matches up with our physics. It almost entirely overlaps.
What the fuck are you talking about?
What are you looking at? That's that.
I know it's not absorption. That's emission.
That's a terrible fucking chart. Just go pull the data from NIST. My computer's down. Otherwise, I'd pull that. I have an actual side-by-side comparison of the two spectra. I think I've even linked it in chat before, sometime a year or so ago. But if you actually pull the individual spectra for water and the individual spectra from CO2, and you do a comparative range, what you find is water is equally active to CO2 over its absorbance range. It's way more absorbent over another range.
Oh, it's just way more absorbent of IR in general. But yeah.
Yes. But outside of CO2's
that's
range.
A bad image. There's an SVG-based transparent piece of shit for you.
Just go to the NIST website. The NIST, you can pull the spectra directly from them. It's pretty
Yeah,
good.
but Google image search is fast and
Google
terrible,
image search
but
is
fast.
terrible.
It is terrible.
It's terrible.
It is.
It's
I
fucking
mean,
terrible.
It's fast.
Go to
let's
NIST.
be
It's
real.
terrible.
NIST
Yes.
is slow, but good. Google search is bad. But yeah, so that's literally what we got. We got, on one hand, we have the actual physics and the actual measurements in full agreement. We should be full stop saying we're done. And then when you sit there and you talk what climatologists believe it to be, it's literally it's almost up to a full order of magnitude more than that. I think they actually go all, where the measurements are very tightly narrow banded, around 1.5 to 1.75, right? And that matches
Here
with the
we go.
physics.
This
The
is
actual-
still not NIST, but there you go. I'm telling you, see that trough in the middle there? That's nowhere near the 2 troughs for the CO2.
What are you talking about? Hold on.
It's a
That's not
transmittance.
NIST.
I told you it's not
Yeah,
NIST.
I
How
get
do I-
absorbance. I don't want percent T.
It's the same
Percent
shit. It doesn't matter.
transmittance
Just
is-
flip it
No,
upside down in your head.
Okay,
I
I'll
under-
have to
things need to
link
line
this
up. That's
for
all you're
everybody
asking.
in the
So
chat if they want to check out any
Look,
of these.
point being here, there's one
Data
peak
points.
for CO2 that lines up very well with the peak for H2O, and there's one peak for CO2 which does not line up very well with H2O. There's
it does.
there's a wave number difference between the two of them, and just saying the main peak for
They
water
both-
is
they
not the
both
same as
line
the
up.
peaks for CO2.
They both line up pretty well for 2 different peaks with water. And water is still active over
The one on the
entire
right doesn't
range.
line up that well.
The water is still active over the entire range of
I
CO2,
should put
and the
these up
one on the
Ember.
left is just slightly above water's normal percent transmittance. Like, it's just slightly above at that one point where there's just slightly more
Okay,
energy.
I
being
should point
absorbed
out
by
that
CO2.
the vertical axis on this is arbitrary units because you can't they're not doing a direct overlay. I'm pretty sure.
That's why I
of that.
prefer. That's why I prefer
I know.
absorbance.
But this was just like
Absorbance is
again,
always better than
fast.
percent transmittance.
It's the same shit.
Go
in
to
this thing,
NIST.
all right?
It is
I'm
not
not-
the same thing.
I mean, you're
you know
crying
it.
about a minor difference. I know it's different. You're crying about a minor difference in this instance here. Like this graphic gives you all the information that we're
It does.
over.
It
I'm
does.
nitpicking over.
But at the same, NIST is still
I'll
more
be
accurate.
honest there. I'm the one being an asshole here.
You are being an asshole. But yeah, so
Anyway.
like, I mean, when we are literally talking about our physical data and
There
our
we go.
observations in alignment with our theoretical physics, and they're like, no, but wait, there's all these other things that we haven't found, but we believe exist anyways. You're
They're
way
all
off base.
positive forcing terms. That's fucking brilliance.
yes, every single one of them.
So we've covered this in the past, but the short version is when you're doing optimizations, it's very easy and it gives you better convergence, so quadratic versus linear, typically, asterisks there. If you take a coefficient that you're trying to regress, if you square it to force it to be positive, greater than or equal to 0, then you get quadratic convergence on it for free because it's a squared term. When you do any basic derivative form on that, so like your Newton's approach or your Householder methods, etc. But like you just square them to guarantee they have a specific range, and that way you don't have any fiddle fuckery around 0. You don't have to build in an offset, for example. But the problem is that will never allow you to put in a negative term there unless you put a minus sign in front of it. So when all of your quote forcing your radiative forcing terms, so these are divergences from homeostasis, if you will. So things that deviate the environment from present, effectively, or present average.
Well, that's what they're supposed to be, but in reality,
the way they're described,
the problem, the forcing terms is a terrible metric.
It's a shit nomenclature too.
No engineer in their right mind would sit there and do that, because at the end of the day, especially when we have something like climate, right? The big problem that you have is that they presume there is a built-in assumption associated with climate, which is that it's a first-order stable system. And thus,
they also are going with a perturbation method, which it's not with. So they're going with the wrong perturbation method, and bad steady state assumptions. And if you're trying to do a perturbation method from a steady state, you have to actually solve the fucking steady state first, and not assume.
Right. And they don't. They basically do a curve-fitting exercise.
Yeah.
They do a curve-fitting exercise. They have a shitload of assumptions, and they say, well, everything that we don't fully understand, we attribute to CO2. And that's basically
or other gases. They add other gases in there, mind you. But CO2 is the big one. But they add in the methane, and I think they even add in
the reason that CO2 is the
minor.
big one. The reason the CO2 is the big one is they believe that CO2 has the highest residence time in the atmosphere. And
besides,
it's a non-condensable
water.
Well, yeah, but water's a
lest they
gas.
fucking forget.
Well, God forbid.
So I saw recently. There's this fucking woman. The Extinction Rebellion morons over there in England, clogging up traffic on the street. This woman on video saying, "We're gonna run out of oxygen. We're gonna kill all the plankton." She doesn't understand how many millions of years it took to fill the fucking atmosphere with oxygen in the first place. We have enough oxygen in the atmosphere to evolve as a species to consume some other material from our environment for respiration. It's a very thin film on the planet, but it is fucking enormous on a human scale, the amount of oxygen that there is.
I mean, at the end of the day, though, right? Like, even then, you still are dealing with the more CO2 you have, the faster the plants grow. So you should have these negative feedbacks associated with CO2 concentration.
Yeah, but just presuming that the 80% carbon sink that produces more than a third of it's like 60% plus the oxygen. Supposing all the phytoplankton goes away, and then that is just never recovered. Suppose all green life on the Earth goes away, but we still somehow have food. I know brainlet exercise, but you bear with me on that.
Yeah, no, okay, magical Mad Max scenario happens. There you go.
We have enough oxygen. We've got tons of it.
How exactly did they die? That's what I want to know.
No, that was the other fun part. Was like there was no, ocean pollution. I think came up in the babbling, but there was no basis for that fear. It was just it's gonna happen.
Well, that goes back to what Schellenberger was saying, is at the end of the day, it's about our sins against the environment, and we have to atone for it, and that's what the climate change and climate change payments are. It's not people who are actually understanding what we're doing.
Well, if it was, they would endorse nuclear wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
I mean,
my favorite part is the activists who were against nuclear before. Months ago, we were discussing that one woman from Twitter. I love when they and I genuinely like the fact that they do this because they're now advocating something that makes sense. But at the same time, the cringe they go through as they look back on their former protesting of nuclear, and then their new enthusiastic advocacy for nuclear, but more importantly, informed advocacy. Whereas before, they were just blissfully ignorant.
It's gonna make a Godzilla!
Most of the time when you start talking about the folks who are opposed to nuclear energy, it's because they know nothing about it. Their entire experience with nuclear is not talking to a nuclear engineer. It's not talking to a nuclear scientist. It is sitting there and listening to Greenpeace and what the hell is that group of scientists that have that clock that they just moved a hand?
Oh, the doomsday scientists, yeah. But the other thing they get their info on nuclear is The Simpsons. That's where they know everything about nuclear from.
Oh my God, the console room.
Yeah, there's every one of them's got a guy like Homer working there. Can you really afford to have a Homer working at your local energy plant? I mean, come on.
I mean, to be real,
like The Simpsons is a documentary.
That's how most console rooms look.
I believe that actually.
Especially when you start talking about the 1980s when The Simpsons first aired. That's actually what they legitimately. if you actually take a look at a few other of the pictures of people in console rooms. Now, the since 2001, the NRC doesn't allow photos in the console room for
Oh,
semi-obvious reasons.
You don't say.
But at the same time, they are in fact very similar to that.
Yeah, I can imagine they're basically about as updated as air traffic control towers have become. Just newer technology based on the same old tech. Or the same old tech just sitting there with new monitors and shit next to it.
Some of it's going to be older, some of it's going to be newer. Realistically, because we haven't really built any new plants, most of the technology is going to be pretty much unchanged from where it was in the 1980s. And that's because to get new, this is one of the problems that you have right now in terms of American nuclear. We have put so many barriers between us and actually like advancing the technology, so the technology can't advance effectively. So what ends up happening is if you want to change anything, you have to write a procedure. So if I want to sit there and upgrade to new pH meters, right, for instance, I would have to pay somebody to go write the procedure, and then it's going to go sit with the NRC for a few years. It's got to go through the whole licensing review, and they got to pay for it. So it's going to be an $80,000 procedure to upgrade their pH meter. So even though, and I saw this when I was at Plymouth Pilgrim, even though there are modern pH meters where you can throw a probe in a tank, get a reading almost instantly, they're beautiful bulbs. They're still using this baffle spin turbulence system from the 1960s when the plant was originally built, that they can't even like find spare cups for, because they actually, one of the things I fixed for them was they had one cup that was a baffled cup and the other one was just a cup. And so they when you have a spinning thing, the purpose of the baffles is to mitigate the mixture of the air. So you basically get a better spun solution. So they would have this crazy moving gauge when they were trying to gauge the pH of the reactor water. And it's just fluctuating because of air increases. So you have stuff like that where they can't buy these pieces of equipment that break or get damaged over time. And so they basically run off spare parts rather than upgrading the plant. And that's because of regulation.
And let me guess, it all runs on COBOL, right?
I'm sure a lot of it does. I mean, this is one of the things that was kind of exciting about the new AP1000s that they're building down south, because those, once they're up and running, will have a full new dashboard with new equipment. That was one of the reasons why those plants were projected to cost 80% of what traditional nuke plants cost. They had a whole bunch of, they had additional safety, additional redundancy, but there was a lot of upgraded sensors and equipment.
Oh, just modernized?
Which decreased the, yeah.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
the downside is the first time you ever build something, right, it costs way more to build the first version of it than it does to build the second and the third, and that's what you saw down there. And so, you know, the hippies were saying, oh, nuclear costs so much. Well, no, if we were building them like South Korea, then it wouldn't cost that much, and you can use the South Korea numbers for actual estimates of nuclear costs, and you should. But in the case of the U.S., we haven't built a plant in 30 years, and it's a new design, and there's no construction companies that are used to working with those type of tolerances for like shielding and all the other stuff. So you basically have to teach everybody everything rather than having a competent crew of people who are trained to do it. And you know, the NRC is new regulators. They don't want to, you know, nobody wants to. I can tell you, as much as I rail against IH and all of the rules, I will not sign my name to something unless it's goddamn amazing. And that's I empathize with the NRC guys who are saying, yeah, no, we got to stop work. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with this. And every single time somebody gets replaced, right, you got to you get attrition or something like that. You got to go train the new person up, get them more comfortable, all that stuff. So that's why those plants are costing as much as they are.
No, I can imagine. Human capital is always terribly expensive.
Well, you know, you say that, but you haven't spoken to the Chinese.
Okay.
Well,
that doesn't exactly count. But you make a good point.
It's funny you say that. They don't think so either.
Yeah, I know, right?
If the
That's cheating.
The HBO special on Chernobyl taught me anything, it's that Uyghurs, especially pregnant Uyghurs, are best used as shielding.
Well, I mean, if we're asking Xi, I'm sure he would agree.
I mean, well, so I'm probably making a joke nobody gets. They came around at one point in the HBO special and turned to the pregnant woman who just met with her husband, who was one of the firefighters, and said, "Your baby absorbed all the radiation from your husband." A, he has no radiation in him; he's already received the dose, and B, it doesn't suddenly go and target fetuses. So,
Oh, unlike the coronavirus, which actually targets right-wing rallies and avoids left-wing gatherings. Gotcha.
Yeah, especially when they're chugging champagne mouth to mouth in the streets.
Well, it depends. I mean, if it's a
No life on the
sophisticated
bottle.
crowd, it might not have such a foothold. It might not be as much of a Mask of the Red Death as one might think.
Oh, yes. Well, the sophistication is what definitely kept Martha's Vineyard from having an explosion in cases after a certain birthday bash.
Yeah, it's not like I used the Mask of the Red Death as a specific reference. Anyway, I've got another reference here from since we were talking about China. You guys have heard about the Evergrande problem, right?
You
Well,
talk about that like it's
What?
over.
oh no, no, just it's ongoing. Quick update on that. They paid like their
I didn't catch. What are we talking about?
Evergrande out of China.
The economic
Is that the
collapse coming
city
in.
that like nobody lived in is collapsing?
No. That is like a third of their economy.
Yeah, Evergrande is basically one of their big financiers. To put this really
It's their
simply.
property underwriter. It's the property underwriter of like the country.
Yeah, and they're badly underwater.
What people miss on this is that because in China you can't like invest and save like you do in the U.S. The way people do it over there is they have their house. They buy their house. That's their big investment, and then they pay in against that debt to eliminate it over the course of their life, and then they have the land. But if Evergrande collapses, then they lose all. They have to liquidate everything, which means all the debt-bearing assets have to be called in. Means everybody loses their home. Like a third of the economy will vanish.
Yeah,
overnight
just like
if
poof.
that collapses, and that's like everyone's savings
Because
what they live in.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
other than, the incredibly wealthy who have ways of diversifying their funds that fall outside of traditional
Yeah.
eyes.
They just
So-
happen to have like 10 trucks, literally 10 trucks worth of cash in their house, like that one general.
Oh, yeah, you have that sort of thing. So, on top of this, what's recently happened with Evergrande is they basically paid the absolute minimum that was required to avoid defaulting. So, they're on life support still. But what I was wanting to bring up is that there's another real estate broker, Cynic Holdings, that they're not likely to replay their offshore bonds worth $250 million.
Well, it's funny because it doesn't sound like much, but when it collapses the entire fractional reserve based debt outreach of one of these institutions, you just like tack a few zeros on the end. And it just gets funnier the worse it gets. As you start realizing like exactly how how ballooned that bubble is that's about to fall apart.
Yeah, if anyone in the audience at all is familiar with the Japanese bubble economy, what we're looking at here is an exponent of that. We're looking at an order of magnitude greater bubble here. And I don't even know, an order of magnitude is really not an adequate way of doing justice to
You
what
said
this is.
exponent, and that's exponent is a good way. I was gonna say magnitude and exponent don't go together like that, but
No, they don't.
exponent
Yeah,
is
it's
a good way to say it.
yeah, it is an exponent of this as opposed to an order of magnitude. It's really quite something and could completely crush China. I mean, this could
is
be a
bad for
fall
us, by
as
the way.
bad. Oh yeah, no, we are deeply invested.
It's not even the cross investment. It's the fact that when the world economy
They make a
is
bunch of our
complicated
shit.
engine, the world economy is a complicated engine. It doesn't matter like if we still make the shit over here. The fact that the world economy is interconnected as it is means you throw a small wrench into that big engine and it's still going to stall. You saw that with the housing market in the U.S. fucking the entire planet. Basically, they're having that moment over there in China, and they're trying to avoid it because the way their economy works, they can kind of somewhat see it coming.
and
It doesn't just creep up as quickly.
they can fuck with it, but they can only fuck with it so much without completely breaking everything, and they're right on the razor's edge.
So the fucking with it thing is the central bank, and it is a government-run central bank. They can just issue more currency, but the problem is the communists over there are halfway through the realization that you can't just do that forever because they've been doing that forever.
Yeah, modern monetary theory does not work.
It's one of their ways to fuck with people outside the country is they get them invested in Chinese currency, and then they just devalue it out from underneath them to recoup the losses, and just assume that all of China gains the losses back, which technically they kind of do, but only as long as people are willing to put up with that shit on the outside. And as soon as they start and because they're not like invested the way the U.S. was back in the 90s with China, keep in mind they only hold like a couple $1 trillion of our debt. That meant something back then because it was a lot of our debt. Nowadays, it's hilariously low in terms of the fraction of our debt that they can manipulate. So,
yeah, I mean,
China's
credit where it's due, actually. You know, with these trillions and trillions in debt, we have actually devalued anything that we owe to any of these other motherfuckers, I suppose. So I guess kudos there.
Yeah. The problem is it also devalued all the shit that they owe to all the bondholders.
I am, every single day that goes by, because I'm still kind of expecting some sort of economic crash here, every day that goes by and they report these really great inflation numbers, I am just super glad that I negotiated on my house, that they've already got a bond out for my mortgage, and that I will be acquiring a new property. And maybe I'll get really lucky and inflation will hit like 50, 60%, and then I'll be able to pay off the house with like a paycheck.
Right. Yeah. Well, as long as you get the cost of living increases and the inflation increases, you know.
Yep.
Yeah. So the basically China is depending. So the same way that that China like previously held that sway over the U.S. by holding our dollars, if they can't keep people holding their dollars outside of the country, they don't have that part of the economy to draw on anymore. They can't withdraw, basically the same way that the government taxes the poor in this country by allowing the Fed to print them more money. China taxes holders of Chinese currency outside of China by inflating the supply, and that's one of the ways they fuck with people like the cartels. That's one of the ways they can tell them what to do, which is why all that fentanyl's coming over the border from new cartel installations that are now fabricating it in Mexico instead of in just importing it from China. So they are relying on people holding Chinese currency, and if they continue to go too much further, they will not only be defaulting on debts, those debts will no longer be held externally, and they will only be able to rely internally on payment for those debts, which means that they are then at the mercy of everyone else they hold currency from to not just basically tell them to fuck off.
And not only that, we can take with that the new Chinese century that they've been desperate to get going. And we can take that, oh yeah, no, that's up in smoke, and we take that with what they have only just recently done, which is a complete overhaul of the way that they handle media. All games, all... Well, give me just one quick second to finish up this point, if you don't mind. With the revamp of the way they're handling the media, where it's basically no sissies in the media, they've kicked all feminists out of all media apparatus. They've said we're only doing manly men, and they've kicked like TikTokers and all this. They're out. So they've redone all this at such a key time to see it possibly, really blow up in their faces. But sorry, I just had to get that point out there because it tied in so well.
Oh no, that. At the end of the day, right, so some people will describe China as a paper tiger, and there's some truth to that.
Oh, indeed.
They are a legitimate military threat in the world, and we should be concerned about them and all that stuff.
Well, to put it in very real terms, a child with a gun, that's a gun. He can pull the trigger as well as an adult.
But when you start talking, when you actually sit down and you look at on paper where China is, as much as they have some stuff that's legitimately scary, they are barely functional as a system.
So
They are growing economically,
there's
and they are
something
hoping
there's
to
something to be said here
outgrow
though.
their flaws.
With the way that they're doing things, they have been rapidly expanding their army and their navy, and it's not to come over and like take Hawaii. Their goal is Taiwan, and that's actually a major problem for the entire world. And the reason for that is that Taiwan is, and this is changing. Under Trump, there were $10 billion tax incentives. You don't have to pay taxes on the first $10 billion or whatever for
Yep.
silicon manufacturers, for chip manufacturers to come back to the U.S. There's
And
at
it was
least one
starting.
plant in Texas. There's a plant in Texas that's supposed to be going up. I think there's one that's not in California. Is another state over in that area. Uh, but point being, chip manufacturers are basically Taiwan.
Yeah,
They supply the whole fucking world.
pretty
And
much.
if you don't think that the U.S. is going to go to war, regardless of how Biden flubs it at the beginning,
Well, actually,
you don't
no.
think
If
you're
we
gonna,
listen to what he just the other day, Biden actually said, "No, absolutely, we would defend China." Those were his specific words. Now, mind you, earlier today, Jen Psaki
if
did come
you're
out
gonna
and
go
say,
to
"Whoa,
war,
whoa,
though,
hold on. No, we're not fully devoted to that." Just wanted to clarify, even though Joe said we
the
were.
point being
But
here, if you don't think that we're going to be going to, like, I don't fucking care if it's like defend China, defend Taiwan, whatever, because Taiwan supply like our militaries, the modern militaries operate on sophisticated technologies and intelligence gathering.
oh yeah, no, it would be framed and
They're
couched
racing
as like
force.
we can't let these people fall, but the whole world
at
would
the
come
same
together to
time,
defend Taiwan.
At the same time, when it comes down to dealing with China, so China, if they decided to go march on Taiwan, we don't actually have to go to war with China. We just have to starve them out. Because
Right.
aside from the financial side of things, they are
We have to
consuming
convince
more.
Russia to let us starve them out. That's the thing that you're missing there,
I mean,
and that's going to
I
be where
don't
they
think.
finally they get to come back and be dicks to us.
That's true. And
Don't get me
Russia
wrong.
has become quite proficient in all of this time of receiving sanctions and trouble. They've gotten quite good at surviving on their own.
But at the same time, Russia doesn't particularly like China, and
Right.
they would rather. So if I was Putin, I would rather watch China fall because I can't take the U.S.
So
And
here's
so
the
what
benefit
you.
that we have right now. Russia hates China because of COVID.
Yep.
Like they already were like kind of they're kind of had benign angst towards them, but they're helping out with because of the whole Cuba and South America kind of thing.
But I think
But
at
they
the
also
end of the
they
day,
hate them right now.
Russia's not an idiot, right? They are a rival, and they need to be respected. Their tech is very good. They've geared up to basically fight the U.S. if they need to, because they see the U.S. as the biggest threat. But at the end of the day, when you start talking about three world powers, let's say Russia, China, and the U.S., and one of those world powers, the U.S., has literally the rest of the world pretty much on its side. Who do you
Right.
choose to do, right? Would you rather rather sit there and wait out a two-way war, or would you rather sit there and let one of your enemies go away? And
So this is
it's
one of the
not like
reasons why I thought
if
Trump
we
was doing
did
well.
go to war with China, it's not like we're going to be stronger for it. So
This is
starving
one of
them
the
out
reasons
is
why
a
I think
good
that
strategy.
despite the Democrat strategy being to force the wedge and to fuck things up in terms of potential for peace, uh, that's one of the things where I think Trump was doing fairly well with the way he was providing sanctions, but olive branches for Putin, despite the
Yep.
fact that he was getting shat on for it in the press every
Well,
time he
and I
tried
mean,
it.
Well, the press has a hate boner for
that's
Russia.
kind of the thing is I think Russia wants to be respected. That's their principal goal, right? They don't want to they don't want to have outsiders influence them and do all this other stuff. And the
For
U.S.
Russia,
does
yes. For
trample.
Putin's just a cunt. Like I think he just wants the world.
Oh, sure.
Well,
I mean, come on.
what he really wants to
The dude
do
was
is
trolling
reinstate the
all
full
the time.
federation. What Putin really wants is to reinstate the full federation, which he's never going to get.
No, he's not. But that's okay.
But you can see under weak presidents, he presses the advantage. Under Obama, he was basically eating up Ukraine. Georgia, that
But
was a joke.
so my guess is if things kicked off between the U.S. and China, all we have to do is starve them out. And you're absolutely right. Russia's not going to be like jumping up and down for joy trying to help us starve them out. But if they will actually probably supply China, but they will supply it at such a high cost to China that China will implode anyways. It's not going to be.
So here's
It's not
my
going to
thought
be.
on that.
They'll get their bombs and their bullets and their gas, but they aren't going to get bombs, bullet, and gas at market rate. They're going to get it at 300%.
Because Russia's going to want to have the
required.
reserve. That's going to be their argument. We still need it in case the U.S. Plows through you and comes after us.
Right.
But
Exactly.
but the thing is, I think that the way that Russia, because they hate China right now because of the whole COVID thing, minor details. I think the way Russia will probably play it is to do a wait and see at the start, and depending on how the U.S. interacts with Russia, I think that if we tell Russia, if you help China, we're going to crush you, Russia's going to be like, yeah, well, here's food for them. But if we say, hey, it'd be really great if you helped us solve this quickly, and maybe we'll take some of these sanctions away. If a president says something smart like that.
Now, on that specific point,
they would help us out.
On that very point, we have to take a note that as much of a piece of dog shit as he is, Biden, being tied to Ukrainian oligarchs, has pulled some strings for Russia. Like, we look at the, what the fuck is the name of that new pipeline that they got through that was otherwise going to be completely sanctioned?
Oh, yeah, that thing.
Yeah, just completely went through.
It wasn't the Keystone.
Yeah, it wasn't the one we shut down here. It was the one that we were trying to get shut down.
It was our competition.
Yeah, basically that was allowed to just completely go through. So, we've already, put out that one olive branch. Thanks there, Skin Suit Joe. Much obliged.
Yeah, so the thing I think that would happen is it's going to be a leaky border no matter what, because border runners are going to see a huge profit margin to go with. Just on food alone, let alone other supplies. I mean, heating oil would be another big one.
Right.
They're going to have border runners no matter what, but the degree with which Russia is going to benignly be supplying these people without caring where the products are going to go, secondary market being across the border,
Nord Stream 2.
Largely depend on how much the U.S. president at the time was willing to play ball to get shit done quickly. And you saw something similar to this in World War II, where Russia, the Second Front with Russia, that was partly because we allowed Russia to carve up Poland with the Nazis, and then turn on the Nazis and fuck them, and then rat fuck Poland, but that's their problem. So the USA was kind of isolationist at the time. The problem is we have a bunch of fucking hippies over here, and Biden in office, and Kamala as the runner-up. And so if they decide they're going to be strong for their base because they played up this Russia bullshit for so long and so hard, they might just get us sucked into yet another forever war on a fucking island. I mean, we've got Okinawa, we've got some bases in the area. Like, we're not prepared for a full-scale invasion of Taiwan.
No.
We've got forces over there that have been training the Taiwanese to defend themselves. We have nowhere near enough to abate actual invasion. And you got to remember that the fleet of civilian vessels in Chinese waters, they are part of the Chinese Navy when it comes to intelligence gathering and the capacity to deliver materials and occupy space.
Yep. If you have more than 50 employees as any Chinese entity, more than 50. Is it 50 or is it 100?
It's 50.
Okay, so if you've got 50 or more employees, you must have a CCP party member on staff, period.
That's a boat.
That's a moderately sized transport vessel.
You got to keep in mind, like all the whole fishing fleet, they routinely use them in the South China Sea to great effect on this. They will occupy waters, and then tell the Navy that comes, like the Filipino Navy that came out and told them to fuck off, and they were sitting inside a little cove. They just didn't.
Yep.
They're civilian vessels. If they get attacked, that is going to be perceived by China as a national threat, and then they'll respond with their navy. the armed navy. That's the actual navy instead of just the fishing fleet. But they're basically use them as a buffer to do the same thing they're doing like up in the north of India, where they'll just kind of say, yeah, but our border is really 10 miles south of where we are, and then it's up to the other country to say, go fuck yourself. They're doing the same thing.
Yep.
They've been doing this in the South China Sea, not just the artificial islands, but like just pushing their fleet there. They'll do the same thing with Taiwan. They've been trying to do something similar with the airspace. Every time they fly out their fighter pilots into the airspace, Taiwan scrambles their jets. So they actually cost Taiwan significant amounts of jet fuel routinely, and like they just don't have the resources of the rest of West Taiwan. So whenever they jump in with their fighter pilots, I mean, effectively they're costing U.S. tax dollars because we're paying for their jet fuel at this point.
Well, and I mean, and that's kind of the thing, though, right? Is if
they're
if
needling
they
in
turn
that
around and they
road
do
there.
something, the question fundamentally comes down to, how much of a cost or how much of China's economy can China run entirely within China? Like, what's their operating? Essentially, all wars are siege wars,
Well,
right? Every
if
single
we
war
go
is
to
a siege
war,
war.
if we go to war and we have to cross the ocean to get to Taiwan to defend it or to take it or what have you, China's right there. It is far easier for them to hold Taiwan than it is for us to hold Taiwan.
I mean,
And
understood, but
and I'm
again,
just saying, like that we turned the U.S. economy around on a dime for World War II. Not saying they're going to do it because I'm sure that they're going to find a way to fuck it up, but like it's not outside the realm of potential for them to be able to linger on and drag out a war over a decade.
I see. The problem is that they are truly missing critical supplies. They do not have
Sure.
energy resources. They don't really have enough arable farmland to feed their people. I understand that they have what
This is
they
why
have
they're in
lower.
Afghanistan right now.
Right. Yes.
Like I
That
just
is.
blanket. This is why they're there. Like just to skip the end of this, Pakistan,
So,
Iran,
so
and Afghanistan, all Chinese and Russian assets right now.
A lot of
right.
resources there.
And these are all very good. This is one of their problems is that they do not have the resources. So
And
kicking
they
off
Belt and
something with
roaded their way
China.
in there. So they have the pull right now to say, look, we gave you this stuff on a 100-year lease. They could probably say, we'll cut off 50 years if you get us this win. And
They might.
if I'm Iran and I'm realizing exactly how fucked I am with this Belt and Road bullshit after their economy is collapsing, I might say, yeah, the faster I get you out of my country, the better. Here's all the oil you want. Here's all the bullets you want.
And all of that's true, but they still have to get it there. And
Sure.
that's
Yeah. And we'll
we
probably
can
bomb the fuck out
we
of
have
Pakistan finally.
we would have
Again.
the ability to wage an economic war still because we are richer people with richer nation and all the other stuff to go do that. Now, granted, everybody's been kind of screwing the pooch because we keep on piling on debt and debt and debt, which
Right.
prevents us from really waging a good, solid economic war. But realistically, like the question is always going to come down to how long can they survive if their supplies get cut off, right?
So our
They
ray of
will never
sunshine
get
there is
100%
India.
supply cut off, but we could probably sit there and trim their inflows to about 20% of what their current needs
So
are.
the lever we will be leaning on to solve to so the major problem here that I would say for a war of this scale is going to be greater than or less than a decade. Nobody's gonna, mutually assured destruction will assume that holds and that no one goes completely off the fucking rail.
Barring hypersonic nuclear missiles.
Right. Yeah. So, in that sense, India is going to be kind of the lever we lean on, and it's going to depend very much on how much they really want to settle the dispute at the northern border, which is entirely disputed because China keeps trying to make it a problem.
True.
They keep pushing. They decided that Nepal is theirs, even though it's not. But they own basically all the politics in Nepal right now, so it's going to become China sooner or later.
Yeah, and
Uh,
on that note, I say that Tibet should be freed. Tibet. Oh my God, Tibet. Free Tibet. Fuck's sake.
all right, in Tibet is also a problem.
Well, West Taiwan needs to free Tibet.
I'm just curious. So like the whole reason that China has the power that it does, right? The whole reason that it has the power that it does
we let them
is because we recognize them to the UN Council. Can't the United States just go recognize Taiwan?
Yes.
Yeah, we can, but that would be so China would immediately cut off relations, and we would be at their economic mercy right now.
Yeah, and I mean, and this is one of the reasons why you as an individual or any individual should always be, or any nation should always be self-sustaining. Like, way to go, Texas, on
Right.
maintaining their independence from the rest of the grid. Like the less, I'm not saying that there aren't good points to being interconnected. However,
The ability
there
to
are
say fuck
bad
off
points
is good.
to being interconnected.
If only they had been able to say that during the winter when the Department of Energy
This
said,
is why-
no, go ahead and not turn those on anyway.
This is why India, I think, is an important lever, because I think if they end up doing the ally thing, and instead of directly going after China, if they maintain their northern border and then they flex their claim on the disputed region to the northwest, that also holds the corridor where they can attack the pipeline through Pakistan. So if they can cut off a resupply route from Iran and Pakistan and Afghanistan, like if they can cut that resource, like all of that off, they can get rid of it by holding that northern region and using that basically as carte blanche to bomb the fuck out of anything crossing that border.
Yep.
Like that is a proxy war on their end, but it largely achieves a countrywide goal for India. And the only way that that's going to be a lever we can push on is if we have a president with the balls to ask for it. Because I bet you India is only going to want to hold the northern region. They're not going to want to bomb Pakistan unless they have to.
And
The issue is that the U.S. is in decline. And the U.S. is in decline because we've had a whole bunch of people who have decided that it is in the best interest of the U.S. to basically, it's like when somebody wins the lottery, right? And that's where the U.S. was. The rest of our everybody else around the world was kind of destroyed. We were the only people who had a manufacturing base. We had all of this great stuff. And then we won the lottery. We were rich. We were wealthy. We were doing better than everybody else.
And then
Every single person shows up at our door and says, "Hey, we love you long time. You give us $1 million." Right? And we did. We gave it to everyone. We said, "Okay, well, we're going to help you. We're going to help you." And now we've basically spent our lottery winnings, and we have nothing to show.
Exceeded that.
Right. Well, that's
yeah, actually spent all the lottery winnings and maxed out all our credit cards.
We're $30 trillion past that point now.
So we had this huge competitive advantage, and it's not one party, it's not one group of people, it's no one person. We have consistently spent our way away from, like, we basically stopped being pragmatic. You start talking about climate change and what we were talking about earlier, where there's a huge difference between the actual measured values, the physics calculated values, and what we quote unquote know about it. We have actually entertained this shit. We have not been asking for performance payouts for our government contracts. We aren't asking for, we have decided that we're going to go for 0 accidents and 0 safety protocols and stuff like that with OSHA. And there's advantages to keeping your workforce healthy and safe, right? There really is. Longer lifespans, more productivity per person, all of that stuff. And obviously there's the moral, I didn't kill anybody.
Then they're alive.
But,
yeah.
Right. But at the same, that's the obvious one. But at the same time, there's a cost that comes into that, which is when you go too far. When you start sitting there and saying, okay, well, I'm not going to take any risks. I'm not going to develop anything. We don't.
even go to the point. I make this argument as it's facetious. Keep that in mind, but it's not ad extremum. You can even go the route of full safety, but you can't do it if you open the fucking door. You can't let everyone in and then keep everyone safe. Your economy is never going to be fast enough to be able to absorb that kind of risk. All your rules are going to be violated.
You can't ever be in a position where you. And the other thing that we did was we turned around and we said, "Oh, well, look at all these rules. These are rather unfortunate and rather irritating, and nobody can get anything done. I know. We're going to trade with a company that doesn't have any of these rules, and we're going to take goods from them without paying for the cost of our rules that we've imposed because we've decided that we like it. And then, oh my God, we don't have the ability to do anything. And this is
again, your economy is never going to be fast enough. Your economy is never going to be fast enough or robust enough if you leave the door wide open. And this isn't just for people crossing the border; it's also goods and services.
It's also corporations leaving to said other destination.
Well, we could. So if we don't if we put we don't have like a VAT that is to the point where it will limit the flow of goods and services across the border and make U.S. companies competitive in the U.S. We have simply allowed the cost of goods and services to fall to the point where the inflated dollar does not allow us to do that anymore unless we actually take the painful steps to do it. And the problem is the inflation in the economy, we're getting the pain anyway because we have idiots in charge.
The issue is that if you turn around and you want to have all of these rules that we purportedly live by to live in a just and moral society, the stuff that the left is constantly, wearing as a badge of honor, let's say. Mm-hmm. The only way that you're actually being just and moral is if you're imposing those same requirements on other people. Now, I can't go into China and say, hey, don't sit there and run slave labor camps. Shame on you. Right? That's not something I can do, nor would I want to, right? But I can turn around and say that if you use slave labor, like we can come in and we can say, this is the estimated cost of having a living wage. This is the estimated cost associated with our environmental compliance. This is the cost associated with our safety compliance. We think this is important for us, and you have to sit there and you're either going to get taxed those costs, or you're going to implement those regs, and we're only going to those people have a lower tax burden. But we didn't do that. We said, hey, we'll take your goods cheap because you can take the environmental hit and the safety hit and all this other stuff. And all of a sudden everybody said, well, then we'll just move our factories over there because then we don't have to pay for any of these costs associated with compliance that the United States says it quote unquote values. So we have this problem where China is trashing the planet, right? Like it's an ecological disaster for all intents and purposes on a massive scale. It is a human rights violation on a scale that we haven't seen since Nazi Germany.
Actually, right? I would say it vastly outpaces it, unless we're talking about everything that was confirmed at Nuremberg.
Right. So you start talking about what we did. We said all of these things that we value, all of our values, well, we don't value them as long as somebody else is paying that price. And had we sat there and kept it internal or charged them for their bad behaviors, so yeah, it means our goods and services would have cost more, but our factories wouldn't have gone over there. And that's the problem. That's how we spent our money, because eventually the piper comes home to roost. You either pay for a good product and a good service that you feel is valuable, or you buy a shitty product and you have to spend all the fucking time in the world making it work. And we paid for the shitty products. We lost our factories. We have to invest our time, effort, and energy into trying to recover. And that's where we are today, because everybody took this short-term, hey, let's get rich quick scheme outlook, rather than, let's pay a little bit more to maintain American factories by sitting there and encouraging China to not,
No, go ahead and keep being shitty as long as the prices are low.
So I gotta go here shortly. I thought I'd go ahead and throw something completely different into the mix here, which we don't have to go through very much because we pointed it out so frequently. If you didn't see, the NIH finally...
Oh, I was just going to bring that up. Yeah, I've got a great link here from Yahoo News on it.
Like you said, we don't have to go into any
Yeah.
depth on this because we fucking pointed it out before.
You know what? You know what the fun part about that
They
article is?
decided to punt it and say that it was EHA's fault because they
That's
did
exactly
things
right.
wrong.
That's exactly right. They have
But that still means
accumulated
Fauci directly lied.
evidence. They have position papers. They have arguments and a PR team ready. They are ready to point the finger at somebody else.
Oh yeah, they are trying to throw EcoHealth Alliance under the bus on this one.
But my favorite part is they can't do it. They can't throw Peter Daszak under the bus because they need him to be the shining golden boy of the USA's WHO response team.
And they
He was
can't
the point,
show.
he was the point man who went in there and said it wasn't in the lab. Like,
yeah, they're between a rock and a hard place here. I think
They're-
Fauci's
they're
going to have to
there
fall on his
until-
sword here. I think that's the
they're
only way
there.
they can do it.
no, they can wait it out. They haven't after the 2022 election. Then they can turn around and stab Daszak in the back and say, "All right, you're out," because they finally gonna have they're gonna have their power cemented in. If they're not, but like that's their hope right there. Their holdout is to string this shit out long enough to get past 2022, so they can basically throw down the guy at the bottom, whoever that ends up being. Like it might be Peter's probably gonna have to go through some proceedings and shit and try to throw it on an intern or some crap. But like point being, at the end of it, like they're gonna try and push all the blame on the EHA, but unequivocally, Fauci lied to Congress,
Yes,
and
directly.
he is easily capable of being charged with contempt of Congress on multiple counts at this point.
Yep.
And he's still gonna get away with it, because he's a bureaucrat piece of shit. But at least, the mud will be on the shoe. Fuck that guy.
Well, the thing about it is, this is out now. So once a different organization has the power to do something about it, something can be done about it. So
Yeah,
theoretically,
the problem is, that organization's never going to be CNN, for example.
oh no. But what I mean to say is that, say, come 2023, if
Right.
another party is in the position that they will be if things aren't fucked with, then
Right.
Fauci will face a reckoning.
Well, if things continue to go the direction they are in terms of being fucked with, sure.
Now, if election protections aren't put into place, well, we'll have to see. But that being said, what's specifically come out recently is there's people on the Republican side that are calling for full investigations now that this has come out.
Oh, you mean like actually looking at the lab leak theory?
You don't fucking say.
I know, right?
Like,
my favorite
oh, and
part
by
is
the
that-
way, in just the past 3 days, the NIH or the CDC, one or the other, has changed their definition of gain of function research on their website.
Well, it probably is just to become consistent with the NIH and NIAID's definitions.
Oh, of course it
Considering
is.
that their definition was malleable gobbledygook, that was specifically intended to allow for circumvention of the rules. Thanks Fauci,
You know what?
thanks Daszak.
This shit where they go in and retroactively change friggin' definitions, that is the most fucking 1984 bullshit.
Oh, it totally is.
Like,
That is
whether
some
it's
straight up Ministry of Truth
anti-vaxxer
shit.
or whatever else, right? Like, it's such bullshit to come in and be like, all right, we're going to change the definition to whatever conforms to the U.S. government standard. Like, I understand that language evolves. I understand that. That
Yeah,
doesn't
but it
mean
does
that
it organically.
language evolves only when politically convenient.
Yeah,
Well,
that isn't evolution.
The
That's
definitions need to be brought up to code so that they reflect accurately all the pronouns that are apparent in the department.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
it's ma'am.
Because that is also organically done.
Well, you know what? My
My
last
policy
thing
is that if you have a problem with the pronouns I give you because of your appearance, then you are now an it. That is the universal
Hey,
pronoun, and no one can deny it.
I have the stuff that my pronouns. And haven't had to try to edit it out one night.
And I'll have to again, so we'll just say that they're inappropriate for this forum.
He
They
has
are
gamer word
perfectly
pronouns.
appropriate.
He has gamer word pronouns, and they are, yes, fine, they're appropriate.
They are.
They're appropriated,
They are.
I think, is the right word for
Listen, You can't come to me and tell me what my pronouns are.
I'm not
I
trying to,
am
sir. Not trying to.
pro every form of trans. It's the best kind of trans.
Oh yeah, no, full Rachel Dolezal over in here. Got that, man.
Yep,
Got it.
I am. Yep, I am.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah, I mean, Rachel Dolezal, oh no, she's light skinned. My man here, he is like Blurple.
The one
That's
thing that I
fucking
will
awful.
say, my last thing for the night. I know that I think last time we talked, we did not have guidance on our
Yeah.
mandate implementation. We did.
Oh yeah, we
finally
were
get
talking about that
guidance.
before the show, so fill us
It
in.
is super fucking shitty. So the short version is that they, like I was planning on going for a religious exemption. And my plan to go for a religious exemption is as an atheist. A, because it's honest, and B, because atheists do have. I know I'm sure there's some folks listening here going, atheism is not a religion. That's not true.
Yeah,
Cringe.
that's
We
religion.
end up developing.
Hat tip.
What's that?
Just tipping my fedora over here. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is, right? So it's it's a belief in secular truth. It's
Sure.
a belief in objectivism and reality, and that science has moved the needle, and that we should follow that,
And
right?
and a belief in
It doesn't
polyamory and having your wife kick you to the curb. I'm
That
sorry.
is not
We're
what
not talking about
atheists
specific
believe in.
atheists now, are we?
It is a general belief in non-supernatural phenomenon and philosophical and ethical things, and that was what I was going to go with. And I was planning on starting to talk about the science, and I was going to talk about rules and regulations. And then they put in a clause that says you can't talk about anything. It has to be a religious belief. It cannot be a philosophical, social, economic,
No moral
or well, so you're not that's not true. They didn't say it can't be moral, but like where I would normally have come in and done
Okay.
something kind of like the discussion that you and I and Evan have here, which is that my belief system is essentially informed by science, right? And that my concerns associated with the vaccines and the reason I don't want to take them is because of my knowledge and understanding of science and
So,
bioethics.
Just to
the
be
end of
clear, what I meant was no moral objection in the same way that there's no more like a moral objection to the draft. That doesn't require
Yes.
religion to be involved. So if there's no
Right,
moral
exactly.
objection allowed in this, okay, there we go.
Or what was it? Is a conscientious objector, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
there we
you
go.
can
Yeah.
still get drafted.
Exactly
and
that, yeah.
As a conscientious objector, you can believe that it is against your beliefs to have to kill another human being, and they are obligated to follow that, and they put you in medic roles and stuff like that, where you are not required to violate your belief,
And
and
they
that
make
does not
crappy
require
movies
a
about you
belief in
later.
God. It does not require a
Although I
belief in
haven't
God
seen
or
that
anything
movie. It
else.
might not be crappy.
It was actually pretty good.
Okay, I mean, it
That
looked
was
like it had a good cast. I just hadn't had the time to see it.
It was very, very well done.
A better
Good.
cast
I mean,
than
I'm
Rust.
sure
It's on my
it's
to-do list, then.
exaggerated. I'm sure it's exaggerated all hell, but it was actually pretty
Right.
well done. But yes, it is severely limited. It was very distressing. One of the reasons I delayed the show this week quite a bit because I was not in a good headspace. I'm still not in a great headspace with this whole thing. Because my objections, it's not a
Well,
it's not
your
a minor
body,
thing.
and you want it to be your choice.
Yeah, it's
Well,
really a big fucking deal. Yeah.
It's a big deal. It's an irreversible medical procedure. I consider it a gene therapy. I think it's as soon as you start injecting your cells with codons that are designed specifically to produce proteins that are not human proteins, that's an issue for me, especially without extensive testing proving that it doesn't stay in your system in some manner or form, cause cancer, whatever it is. So that is kind of where it is. We have finally seen the first lawsuit drop that I think is legitimate. And I know that there's folks out there who probably listen to this who are opposed to the vaccine mandates, and they were sitting there and cheering on all the other stuff. Most of the lawsuits that I've seen up to this date are basically like the Kraken lawsuit. They are ridiculous on their face. And so in the New York Times, and this is one of the problems that I talk about this a lot lately, is the issue I have with conservatives is they're fucking nuts. They don't let people who are smarter than them speak for them. And so you get a whole bunch of people who just basically, they've got a principle, they've got a belief, and they
Oh,
think that they can argue, it's my freedom, and that's not how you make an argument. But I've seen the first legitimate legal challenge to this thing drop, and it is from the Arizona Attorney General. It is not based on some sort of esoteric notion of rights and freedom and politics. It is based solely on the delegation clause, which is it's actually what they hammered Joe Biden on for the rent moratoriums, and that is that the executive branch cannot create law solely on a whim using all of these regulatory bodies.
Unless you're Obama, but details.
Well, I suspect that Obama didn't go as far as Biden has. He really did.
DACA.
That is, yeah.
Whole
DACA's probably the only one. I don't understand.
Okay, yeah, good.
You wanna start talking about things that Republicans should have sued him for, and it should have been DACA. Like, they should have dropped the suit right there, and this is one of the problems that we had is, why didn't they? And the answer is they wanted to use the delegation clause when they came into power. That's kind of how this fucking shit is.
They also wanted to get all that nice cheap labor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lot of rhinos out there.
The fundamental problem is that every single time somebody invents a power for themselves in the federal government, the other party is sitting there and going, yes.
Yep.
Right? Like, they're just sitting there waiting for some... Yeah. So,
not one exception to that rule. It's hard and fast.
There's not a single time that... What was it? It was when they passed Obamacare through. The Democrats were cheering all for that, and then all of a sudden the Republicans did the same fucking shit. All of a sudden it went from, for those who are younger in our audience, it used to be a plurality. 66% of the Senate, 60% of the Senate, and like 66% of the House. And then because they couldn't get agreement on Obamacare, and they had all of the votes to do it solely by themselves, they changed it to a simple majority and passed it through reconciliation. And what did the Republicans do? They came right in, and all of a sudden everything was a 51% vote majority. And then, granted,
all the Democrats cried, and then they didn't understand how this could have happened.
Except
Isn't
they're
that
the ones
funny?
who set the precedent. This shit happens all the damn time.
Look, they're doing the same thing right now with the filibuster.
Yeah, they kill the filibuster. You don't want to see what comes next.
Yeah, that is going to be awful.
Here's the problem. The major problem for the rest of us is that the rest of us are still going to get fucked by the stupid shit that the Republicans are going to pass. It's not all fucking, roses and rainbows on the other side of that hill.
It is not.
Well, and it's not like they're going to undo any of the fuckery that's already been done.
Exactly.
And this, by the way, if you go back to the original foundation of the government, was what the government was formulated to prevent against, right? The reason that the Senate was not originally a popularity vote, your congressional representative was your representative, the Senate was a representative of the states, and then the president was a weighted average between the states and the popular vote. And that was a brilliant system, and it was done specifically to avoid this majority rule power pushing bullshit. And now we're back to power
the concentration of power. And we're going. The part of the thing that's real problem here is that we go back to simple majority rule. Majority is not going to be good enough. Or sorry, not simple majority. Sorry, the 50%. So simple majority. That's not going to be good enough soon. They're talking about a certain amount of senators representing 70% of the population. Blah 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 bullshit. The moment that shifts in the other direction, the minority is suddenly going to need the rights and the rules. They're going to need to be the ones who are allowed to get things done because they're the ones with the good ideas. That's going to be it's going to be called.
That whole claim of the 70%, they're presuming that everybody who's not a Republican agrees with them. And that's not true.
Well, a perfect and absolutely
in that region.
As a matter of fact, let me just break right in here on that exact and specific point. Bernie fucking Sanders was saying just like 2 weeks ago, we can't have two people holding up the desires of 48 others. It's like, you motherfucker, you mean to say you can't have 52 people holding up the desire of 48 others? Did you completely forget
That's
about the
correct.
whole other fucking side of the house, you goddamn asshole?
Yep. So, like, that was a brilliant system. It was set up really well, but we've been concentrating power. So, this is the first legitimate challenge that I've seen. I do expect to see a couple other challenges that are legitimate. I don't know why nobody's done it. One is
Money.
where.
Oh, and I found a
so-
link to that. I've put it in the show links
That's
for
the
everybody
answer.
as well.
Money is the
What's that?
answer, and it's unfortunate.
Well, I mean, money is one thing, but I expect to see a legal challenge on, I expect to see a legal challenge on the, oh shit, I just had it. It is the delegations clause, and then
Well, basically where Biden can't make new laws.
that's the delegations clause. He can't do that. But there's another thing I was thinking that he can't quite do, and it is, I can't remember. It's like a minor point. It's not as strong as the delegations clause, so I kind of forgot about. But that
Well,
is
he
the
flat
first
out can't do
legitimate one.
mandates. Like,
Well, so that's
the-
the delegations clause.
well, no. So here's the thing: the
You
OSHA
can't-
rule change. The OSHA rule change. The
There it is.
argument for that, the argument for the legality of the OSHA rule change is that Congress delegated those powers to OSHA by legislation. That is not something that Biden is doing. That is something that the OSHA system
Yes.
is doing. That's the legal defense that's going to come out on a challenge through the delegations clause. Is that Biden is not the one who is delegating powers here. He is the one that's simply following the law,
Now that
which is
said,
bullshit.
that's
But, you
not
know.
that power has
Except
never
it's
actually
not,
been
because
vested in them, has it not?
Well,
OSHA rules are
this
under
is
under the guidance of OSHA. That's it. No.
This
no
is
extra
this
stuff.
is the other thing, is that when you start talking about the OSHA rule or the the executive power, emergency powers, all this other stuff, they're talking about it as a public health crisis, and the numbers don't back them, right? In order for OSHA to make the claim that they need to be able to create this rule on the fly and basically bypass the system, it needs to be what's considered a grave
Right.
threat.
Yeah,
And
that's a
I
separate
have
lawsuit.
a manual. That's a separate lawsuit. This is a
has to be a
separate
separate
thing.
lawsuit. Yeah.
This is the other thing that I think is a legitimate challenge, and that is that because I have a manual on my desk as somebody who works with radiation and radiation safety. One of the key things that we talk about is relative life risks. It's like drilled into everybody, and that manual states that my lifetime risk exposure from being exposed to the federal limits as they are defined right now per OSHA and all the other, I can't remember what CFR is it.
Right.
But it's roughly a 4 in 10,000 chance of death over the course of my life. And that is a 4 in 10,000 chance of death from cancer. That's my risk. If you go to the CDC data and you take the worst case scenario from the CDC data, it is 500 in a million. And at that rate, it is roughly equivalent to my risk from radiation, which is considered to be well below acceptable life risks. And those previous determinations by OSHA, the government, the CFR, NRC, all the rest of them, those previous determinations are a legitimate legal challenge to the authority to implement the mandate rules.
Well,
And
yeah,
I'm
it sets
waiting
quite
for
a
somebody to
precedent,
sit there
really.
and pull that out.
I mean, you've
Well,
basically
it's not
already got
a
precedent
precedent.
set.
So what you're
Right.
going to have to find
If the
here
government
is
says this is an acceptable life risk, you can't come in and claim that this is a grave risk, as long as it's less
the
than.
problem you're going to find in law in court with this is, and it sucks because it's actually kind of ironic here because it's the same shit that was happening with all those lawsuits for the voting. Until the rule change goes through,
Oh, it's gone through.
So you're probably not going to find any lawsuit until you have somebody who, quote, has standing here.
No,
Even though
thankfully,
if you're-
quite a few do.
Basically, you need a business owner who's willing to put the cash in because the typical pro bonos are not there for this. ACLU, not going to touch it. EFF is not going to be remotely involved because it has nothing to do with, I mean, maybe internet company gets fucked by this and maybe they'll jump in. Probably not.
I mean, we could see Peter Thiel jump in here, or somebody like that.
I mean,
I doubt an angel investor is going to dump in capital on something like this when it doesn't have the kind of return they need to make it make financial
it doesn't have
sense.
any return for them.
Oh yeah, no,
It
Right.
this
doesn't have
is
any return.
Well, it might have a
I agree
productivity
with you.
return at the end of the day, but right now it does not have the numbers
I
to make it happen.
100% agree that there is not money in in opposing the mandates. So
there really isn't. I
basically,
mean,
this
there's only
requires
there's basically only the
lawyers.
option of keeping what you have or losing it.
Right. So that this is the only way this is going to be profitable for the lawyers are going to be the class action lawsuits,
Yeah.
right? And that
No,
is
no.
not a constitutional challenge. There's a class
So
action lawsuit. So it's
you'll
going to be
see
reliant on.
a class action brought if you have wrongful terminations. Southwest almost ran into this face first. So
Yep.
I don't think we covered it before, but if you remember, there was the week where they were going to fire all those people, and then it turned out that the judge said, "You can't do that, dumbasses," because someone went
Yep.
in and filed for injunctive relief prior to the termination. That would have been what's called a lawyer's wet dream
Oh,
class
so they'd have
action lawsuit
gone like directly
for
in
wrongful
opposition to a
termination.
court order. Oh man, that would have been a
Well,
big deal of fuckery.
well, but beyond the court order,
Well,
had there been no court order, it would have been a wrongful termination suit on an entire class of people, medical and religious exemptions, because that's who was
yep.
involved. There was
And
maybe
that
a
is
handful
there
of
is
moral objectors, and those people could have been let go already, but they don't have as much standing to go on in terms of the court part. Sucks, but that's what it is. But
that's
that was what they were going to get
yeah.
screwed by.
I Yeah, no, I do agree the standing is kind of difficult. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to have to be actually walked off site before they actually have a class. I do think that again, the Arizona Attorney General raising the concern is probably the best chance for a lawsuit to actually go through, because it's a state suing, not an individual seeking relief. It's a state suing. If the state has requested injunctive relief, I am surprised that I haven't seen the state of Florida sue or the state of Texas sue, although I believe they're setting themselves up for it, with the whole executive orders that they pass saying "Thou shalt not mandate in my state."
Yeah.
But at the same time, I would like to see them actually sue the federal government over this rather than try to set up some sort of long game.
Well, the major
I
problem
do
that I see
know.
with the rule change in the future is the fact that they tacked on the extra couple of zeros on all those penalties. And those are those are not small numbers. Changing a $7,000 fine for a first-time federal OSHA inspection failure to $70,000 is a gigantic leap.
Yeah.
Yep.
Changing the multiple offense fine to $700,000 is a ridiculous leap from 70 grand.
Well, and don't forget, right? The other problem that you have here is, and this is something that we've talked about with Fauci in particular, is if they go along with this, it is going to decrease the credibility of OSHA as an organization.
Right.
Like this is one of the reasons why you don't
fucking
do
important
these.
organization.
It is. It's an incredibly important organization. So being wielded for political purposes because Joe couldn't convince a bunch of people that a gene therapy was a really great idea, and him switching to brute force and using their organization to headline it sets them up to be in the same position as the CDC, where it's no longer like people who used to trust these organizations no longer trust it because A, the figureheads like Fauci are fucking up royally, and B, they're playing politics. These organizations, as much as they are under the executive branch's direction, really need to operate as independent entities. In fact,
They have to.
I'm in favor of privatizing specifically for this. They should be chartered and
I
they should be
am
private.
a huge fan of that. Yep. I am okay with delegating them to the states, saying that we want this
states
at
already
the
have
inception,
OSHAs.
and
Every state is required to have an OSHA to begin with. Like that's already a part of the thing.
I have no moral issue with sitting there and getting rid of it from the federal government and having it be a state.
Well, I think the federal implementation should be largely what the CDC is supposed to be at this point in those terms, guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And individual states have their own CDC implementations, and they're the ones who do the data collection, processing of analysis, and so on. The national organization largely does the guidance and national direction for the organization
And
itself.
I would be entirely okay if those federal organizations. See, this is the thing is
Like
I
said,
don't think
chartered and privatized solves the problem by making them self-sufficient private companies. You know, they can be competed against
privatization
even,
and
but
or
eh.
and or just gutting their power, saying you don't have any power or authority to enforce this shit.
Well,
You
I
can
can't
sit
believe that
there and
the
propose.
fucking like CDC. How the hell did under what twisted sense of what power was there to do the rent shit? There wasn't. That thing came out
There
of
wasn't.
nowhere.
No.
They
Well,
asserted
that's
a
the point.
rule and it didn't exist.
That was
And it
the
was rightfully
executive.
struck down.
This goes back to the delegations clause, which is what I think will
That's true.
actually wipe out those two executive orders, because you can't just start mandating. Well, it'll certainly wipe out the one for under 100 employees. I don't think that can stand up in any way, shape, or form.
Well, anything
The
under
other
100
one
employees is not covered by that area. Like that can't be a mandate that they have to submit to.
No, I mean the greater than 100 employees thing.
Yeah.
They split it into two executive orders. The other one, the federal contractors and the executive branch one, I think that's still, it's legally questionable for federal contractors. It's less questionable for executive
Well, it's not in the
branch
contract
employees.
you signed at the beginning. If it was a renewal, then they could put that in as a rider, which is probably only going to
here's how they're handling that, right?
Yeah.
Even though I signed a contract with my employer, the employer is saying that they're just going to re-sign the contract with the federal government.
Right.
And I have no say whatsoever. It doesn't, like, they're not changing my contract in any way, shape, or form.
They're changing the contract they signed with the government, which is what I was saying. They're kind of just, every time they, and the thing is, the federal government's going to find a way to compel a renewal ahead of time, which is going to be how you end up getting screwed by that. But so just for efficiency's sake, which is silly.
Yep, and this is like, that's why I'm hoping that the whole thing gets struck down, and if it gets struck down, then we can see that. I would also like to see broader implementation of religious mandates, and it's really tough for me too, because I'm not inherently opposed to the idea of vaccine mandates. I think that if you're talking about participation in schools and stuff like that, where it's like, you're seeking a government service.
Go back to last year even, and this is where we were talking about things ending up. It's going to be a school vaccine. Like, it's just the way it's going to be.
As long as, and this is the thing, is like, I think that's a perfect example for why we should have school choice. If somebody wants to come in and doesn't want to get a vaccine, they shouldn't be required to pay tax dollars to a school. And then have to go homeschool their kid. Like, I think that's a perfectly legitimate, like, you want to do your thing, they want to do this thing, they put in this.
Right.
I don't think coming in to an adult in a workplace and saying you're going to lose your job.
There are norms and exemptions for a reason for school vaccinations, and they protect people from being forced to take something that will kill them.
Or potentially injure them, or what have you.
Like just outright kill them.
Significant psychological distress.
So,
but I mean,
the medical exemption is specifically there to prevent death, and that is a major important thing. And again, I talked about the Southwest thing. The psychotic pushes for these vaccine mandates. They create the kind of environment that incentivizes skipping, like just cutting corners to the point where you will cause death. You'll cause
and that's the thing.
Preventable, known ahead of time, definite death.
Yep.
That's bad.
And I mean, ultimately, that's what a lot of people are concerned about with this vaccine itself, is the cutting of the corners. Because again, we talk about it, and we talk about it all the time. When I ask questions, there's certain things that we don't know, and we can't know, because we don't have the time period that's required for these things to manifest. It's one thing if we have older technologies, it's another thing when we have newer technologies. But I think that I want to see more handcuffs on the federal government. It's not a I want Democrats and Republicans to both be handcuffed. I don't want to
Oh, I'd
have
love to see feds in
someone
handcuffs.
show up.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, I mean, I mean, in the lines of terms of what they can pass and what they can't. I would really
I
love
think
to
that
see.
you're
Oh,
onto
I
something
agree,
here. We
literally
should,
and figuratively.
I think that there should be an iron rod next to each of their desks, and it should have a locked cap on top, and they should be handcuffed to the fucker.
I would be very
They
happy
get 2 days of
if
vacation a year.
we are moving into a more and more technically challenging world, and we have a whole bunch of people who have no technical expertise, and we should be writing down definitions for what is regulatable. Like what level of interference, what is it that will allow for a level of interference? Because this arbitrary shit, it doesn't work out so well. Like we should be learning from this point that giving the government all the power that they want in the world to go do whatever they want to whomever they want is a problem, and that they should
If
have
they want to
hard and fast limits for when they can intervene.
if they want to go down that road with like rent controls, then I feel like I should be able to arbitrarily determine how much tax I pay towards that.
Fair by me. Yeah, like if we're gonna do that, I should be able to choose
Fuck me
where
over
are my
anyway,
tax
may as well
dollars
do it
going.
directly.
I want only this many dollars going towards this. I only want the CDC getting this many dollars. Like if you're gonna be doing this bullshit, then we need to be able to decide where our money goes.
I think that when you pay taxes, you should be able to get like even if it's just a fucking suggestion form, just for facetious sake here, at the start of this, why not put like add in your tax form like here's a list of boxes you can check for federal government programs or departments that you want your dollars going to, like just a way to parse up the pool. And again, even if it's just suggestions, just like an initial way that their budgeting has to go through this. Like I think just having that list in front of people will help them realize what their tax dollars are going to. Like just mandating that list has to show up with the form. It's part of the form, Government Paper Reduction Act, whatever the fuck it's called, be damned. You're getting the long ass form with all these programs on it, and even if it's on the computer, you have to scroll through the fucker in order to get to the bottom, just to see how much is there.
I would be they list how much how much of your tax money would normally
like a
have
damn
gone
Texas
to them.
abortion law. You should have to go to the clinic and be told this shit.
Yeah. But that's where I'm at right now. In any case, I'm hopeful for this thing. I know you said you had to go probably about an hour ago.
Yeah, there was.
Half hour ago, but yeah, it's time.
I'm thinking it's time.
I've been slowly getting the room ready and blah 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 while we've been talking here.
No worries.
Sorry for the noise in the background.
No, it's been fine. I've only heard like a handful of chips eaten and nothing else, so we're good to go.
Yeah, you and your fucking corn chips.
Listen, I was drunk, and I was hungry, and I wanted some goddamn motherfucking chips.
Their ears exploded from the chip crunching.
So, no headphone warning this time, folks.
Made better is if Chipotle sold their hot salsa. Like, I'm slowly.
That is
getting
good
to the point
salsa.
where
I won't lie.
it is great salsa.
Like the really hot stuff they make
honestly,
is like delicious.
Yes. It's a tomatillo salsa, and like salsa verde is a tomatillo salsa as well. But it's not the same thing. Like I've had multiple salsa verdes, and I've had no success.
Talk to you guys later.
All right, night, man. Good to talk to you,
my man.
So that was Craig at CraigBob99. Basically everywhere. Hit him up if any questions, ideas, or concerns and comments, or what the fuck ever, or just shit talk if you like. Oh, that's all. I was just doing an outro. Go ahead.
What? I didn't say anything.
No, I know. I just kind of was giving an outro for Craig. You want to do your own?
Oh.
Or I can do it.
Well, I'm Steve. At Ratman720, wherever you may find me. I will do my very best to respond, as long as Craig doesn't drag me into one of his insanely large threads with way too many people in it.
There is someone
also
from
hit me up here
February
on-
that is still bugging him.
It's 90 some odd people today. Like I can't even open Twitter. I'm just gonna wait till it gets quiet again. But you know, you can always wherever you want to hit me up for @Ratman720. I'm more than happy to answer questions and have a good solid conversation with whoever would like to have it. But you have fun, you party people.
And I'm Evan, at that fake guy Dan, everywhere except Facebook, because that place is fucking weird and run by cyborg lizards, and you can't trust a cyborg lizard. So, that being the case, look me up anywhere else. And you're obviously listening to the podcast, so I don't need to tell you where to find it, but it is everywhere, and tell everybody else to look it up everywhere. And beyond that, if there's anything that anybody that's listening or watching or however you're taking in this glorious content, just get in touch with any one of us with any ideas, or if you'd like an invite to the Discord so we can continue the conversation, that'd be awesome. And otherwise, thanks for being here. And hell, I started it out with the good news, so well, actually, no, we kind of finished with the people are finally calling for Fauci to be investigated, so that's good news, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's honestly really good news.
It's not good news when they call for them to be investigated. Hell, we had friggin'
that's a bare fucking minimum, actually.
It's only good news when something comes of that call.
Yeah, fair point. That reminds me of something. I wonder whatever happened to Billy Bob, Bo, Joe Bob, Fred Bob, Jimmy Bob from North Carolina that parked his brodozer in front of the Library of Congress. We never did hear back from that fellow that was from Central Casting that drove that brodozer that he got out of the. What do they call that thing when you work at the agency and you go down to the motor pool? Yeah, he went down to the motor pool when his boss told him to. Well, anyway, that's a story for another day. So, good times. Yeah, but really nothing has come back from that guy that was like, your boys have built me these things here, Joe. Old Joe, I'm fixing to tell you about these things your boys built me and told me to bring down here. But, we'll see. We'll see if we ever hear anything more about that. Him. Well, anyway, been a pleasure. Talk to everybody again real soon.